Alright, so tell you the last part that we're doing a quartzite uh, simulation. So this is the metamorphic is a present of quartzite and it beats pressure of the rock or on the rock. Mean and grained in the texture is granular. It is original. It is a regional or contact in the rock. It is qualified by sandstone in other cases. It is a type of sedimentary rock for the grains that have the power. Quartzite can be found in Pennsylvania in central Texas. Quartzite is typically light colored and even white due to the sandstone of other cases. So this is what it looks like right here. It is a hard rock or hard rough rock that is taken by heavy choices. It is exposed by high temperatures forming its density. So that's what quartzite is all about. Yeah. All right. Let's do the activity imperialism or not. This might take a little long, so let's read directions first. Directions: read the following questions, or read the following simulations or situations. You can read the simulations. These are called like simulations or answers. So read the answers and decide whether the situation is currently an act of imperialism, currently not an act of imperialism, or describe what you think can be called. After deciding if the situation is like not or is, or a situation is or is not imperialism, defend your decision as to why. If you need more room, you can add a piece of paper or line paper. First, June 1675, July 1676, New England. Settlers from the Boston and Plymouth colonies were expanding the west from the Atlantic coast and encountering the Wampanoag people. Increased competition for resources, particularly land for planting, hunting, and fishing, caused friction between the two groups, changing the regional economy, such as collapse in the fur trade, led many native people to support themselves by selling their land, but a continuing problem was the trampling of native cornfields by colonists' livestock after a dispute over. The death of the Wampanoag trader of 1675, hostilities broke out and King Philip's War began in the following year. Over 600 colonists and 3,000 Indians were killed all over the continent, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. The colonists were eventually victorious. Hundreds of Indians were sold to slavery in the Caribbean. The Narragansett, Wampanoag, Podunk, and Nipmuc were virtually eliminated, while the Mohicans were greatly weakened. Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island were now fully open to European colonization. Clearly an act of imperialism, or clearly not. Explain why. Here are the group members and defend. Alright, part 2.
2. April 11, 1803, Louisiana Purchase. In 1682, Francis Sierra de La Salle claimed the Louisiana Territory for France without regard for the thousands of native peoples living in the area. In 1803, the United States negotiated the purchase of the Louisiana Territory from France for $15 million. With a stroke of a pen, America doubled in size, making it one of the largest nations in the world. Clearly an act of imperialism or
So this is part 3 of July 27th, 1916, which is from Florida.
The First Seminole War erupted over invasions by U.S. authorities to recapture runaway black. The First Seminole War erupted over slaves living among Seminole groups in Spanish Florida. The fort on the Georgia border where runaway slaves would seek protection was known as Negro Fort, as it contained hundreds of fugitive slaves and Seminole Indians. As many as 800 slaves settled in the surrounding area from 1815 1816. In July of 1816, General Andrew Jackson instructed Major General Edmund P. Gaines to destroy Negro Fort and restore the stolen Negroes and property to their rightful owners. On July 27, 1816, General Gaines destroyed the fort, leading to the First Seminole War 1817-1818. In 1821, Spain formally sold Florida to the United States for $5 million. The Second Seminole War, 1835-1842, would begin after the Indian Removal Act of 1830 spurred the rounding up and deportation of Seminole Indians in the Trail of Tears. After 1835, Florida was wide open to American settlement. Clearly an act of imperial.
So this is part 4, December 2nd, 1823 of Washington, D.C. This is where President James Monroe delivered what is known as the
President James Monroe delivered what is known as the Monroe Doctrine to Congress on December. President James Monroe delivered 1823. Essentially, the United States was informing the powers of the Old World that the American continents were no longer open to European colonization, and that any effort to extend European political influence into the New World would be considered by the United States as dangerous to our peace and safety. The United States would not interfere in European wars or internal affairs, and expected Europe to stay out of American affairs. Many people interpreted this as a statement against colonialism, yet practically, the United States established that it could issue ultimatums which would be respected by world powers.
So this is for part 5 of April 25th, 1846 from Texas, which is from the U.S.-Mexican War began on April 25th, 1846 after U.S. troops stationed in Texas by President James.
K. Polk encroached on Mexican territory and was fired on by Mexican forces. It ended nearly 2 years later with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo on February 2, 1848, which fixed the Rio Grande as the boundary of Texas and required Mexico to sell all the territory that today includes the states of California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming for $15 million. Clearly an act of
So this is from June 15th, 1898 around Hawaii when Queen Liliuokalani moved to establish a stronger monarchy in the 1890s. American businessman who owned sugar plantations under the leadership of Samuel Dole disposed her on 1893. The administration of President Benjamin Harrison encouraged the takeover and dispatched sailors from the USS Boston to the islands to surround the royal place. Dole sent a delegation of Washington in 1894, seeking annexation, but a new president, Grover Cleveland, opposed annexation and tried to restore the Queen. Dole declared Hawaii an independent republic, spurred by nationalism aroused by the Spanish-American War. The United States annexed Hawaii in 1898, and the urging of President William McKinley, Hawaii was made of territory in the 90s or the 19s, and Dole become its first governor, clearly an act of imperialism, or clearly not. Explain why it's not that process. August 14th, 1990, or wait a minute, August 14th, 1900. August 14th, 1900, China.
After dividing up Africa among European powers at the Berlin Conference, 1894-5, European powers and America began to scramble for what was called spheres of interest. These spheres of interest involved holding leases for all railway and commercial privileges in various regions. The Russians got Port Arthur, the British got the new territories around Hong Kong, the Germans got a leasehold in Shantung, and the Americans got nothing. However, when thousands of people known as Boxers traveled the countryside killing foreigners and eventually occupying Beijing, a coalition of international forces came in on August 14, 1900 and crushed the rebellion. The United States played a significant role because of the many American ships and troops in the Philippines as a result of the Philippine-American War. Because it had participated in suppressing the Boxer Rebellion, the U.S. participated in the aftermath. Secretary of State John Hay called for an expanded open-door policy in all parts of China. Other powers agreed, and the open-door policy allowed foreign access to China number 39's market until World War II closed it once again.
Part
Clearly an act
2.
of imperialism.
Alright, this is the last story. 1904, 1914, 10 years ago for Panama. In 1878, Ferdinand de Lesseps, the French engineer who built the Suez Canal, began to dig canal across. The Isthmus of Panama, which was then part of Colombia, charcoal disease and engineering problems, halted construction of a canal, but a French business, the new Panama Canal Company, still held the rights to the projects. Roosevelt agreed to pay $40 million for the rights, and he began to negotiate with Colombia for control of the land. He offered $10 million for a 50-mile strip across the isthmus. Colombia refused. We were dealing with the government for irresponsible bandits, Roosevelt stormed. Was prepared to at once a copy to the isthmus anyhow, and then proceed to dig the canal, but I demeaned likely that there will be a revolution in Panama soon, end quote. Teddy was right. The chief engineer of a new Panama Canal Company organized a local revolt. Roosevelt immediately sent the battleship Nashville and a detachment of Marines in Panama to support any new government. The rebels gladly accepted Roosevelt $39 and $10 million offer, and they give the United States complete control of a 10-mile wild canal zone. Roosevelt ordered any Army engineers to start digging despite level landslides. Workers with dynamite and clumsy steam shovels cut their way out across the continent. They built the railroad, 3 sets of concrete locks, a huge artificial lake. They used to retain control of the Panama Canal until 2000s, when a treaty signed in 1977. Like I said, the U.S. retained control of the Panama Canal until 2000, which was my brother was born, so he's turning 21 this year, Dylan Simpson. When a treaty signed in 1977 by Jimmy Carter finally came to effect, so clearly active in imperialism or clearly not. What do you think it is? I mean, you guys don't have to agree with me of what I've put in common. I mean, I didn't put the answers in it really anyway, because I didn't know what to do with that assignment, because I didn't know what the assignment was about. So I gotta be completely honest with you. If you just give me an assignment that I don't even know about, I gotta be honest with you. You guys can don't I don't have to do that assignment because I don't know much about it. Let's talk about the Shell Limestone. This was our last time for that last semester that I've done, which was first semester. So Shell Limestone, made from calcite, CaCO3, 0.001 grain size. It is composed primarily of calcium carbonate, water and ice. A simulation of shell. Continental environment processes fresh water for limestones. Shell limestones appear in about 97% calcium carbonate. So this is what it looks like. Pretty interesting, isn't it? It can be used for living organisms, at oysters, clams, and useful water that helps it processes better than usual. It can be used for toothpaste prints or any creature you see or look at to be hidden or found in the ocean. You can find this anywhere you find. I only have about an hour before I log off here. Let's talk about the stimuli activity. So this is me holding a phone, like a phone call. So let me read this one. So a phone is if a baby is having issues or anything, if something goes wrong, call a family member for emergency purposes. Babies learn of being protective and surrounding the baby for getting hurt. 2. Babies learn not to eat things that are not food. Babies are learned to be watched at all times. Babies are learned to be kind and playful. Babies learn about their relationships. Sight, protecting yourself, see things, using dependently, developmentally appropriate clear sound. Hearing, tone, and audio. So this is sounds are hearing, tone, and audio. So taste, eating, drinking, try a different topic, touch, feelings, hugs, and pat for attention. Sight, using your eyes and glasses can see more better for at least for topic processes virtual detail. Sound, hearing the audio or noise that attracts others and low can turn down volume. Taste, when you eat or drink, you can taste the experience of what you enjoy having the lunch break. Touch, when you touch or poke to get attention to keep hands to yourself. Smell, when you smell foods or lotions or a different place that smells the directory. So this is our the five senses of touch, smell, taste, all those things. You guys knew that. You guys probably know this around when you're little or something, probably around preschool. I am going to do the July of 27th, 1816. So I'm going to let this one. So this is a group project that we did. Alright, I'm going to be reading this one. So this is from Florida. The first Seminole War erupted over nations by U.S. authorities to recapture runaway black slaves living along Seminole groups in Spanish Florida. The Florida to the Georgia border, when runaway slaves would seek protection, was known as Negro Fort, as it contained hundreds of fugitive slaves and Seminole Indians. As many as 800 slaves settled in the surrounding areas from 1815 to 1816. In July of 1816, General Andrew Jackson instructed Major and General Edmund P. James to destroy Negro Fort and restore the stolen Negroes and property to their rightful owners. On July 27, 1816, General James destroyed the fort, leading to the First Seminole War, 1817 to 1818. In 1821, Spain formally sold Florida to the United States for $500. What? Well, not $5 million. Sorry. But some of the rent was probably around like $500 for some people that have to pay for that stuff, because most people will just change their time around $500. Sometimes it happens to most people when they have to pay the prices of the destruction of payment. The Second Seminole War, 1845 to 1842, would begin after the Indian Removal Act of 1830 speared for rounding up the deportation of Seminole Indians in a trail of tears. After 1845, Florida was wide open to American settlement. Clearly an act of imperialism, or clearly not. Explain why. They had to receive it because they had any choice, or they had to use for imperialism's consequences. By Quinn, Sergio, and Allen, defend the first general war was of the removal act points. So that's what we did. We did not do it in person because of e-learning going on. Hopefully e-learning will just be over, even though it's already over for in-person students. but you still have to do the assignments on online. So, all right, let's do the Harlem Renaissance in jazz. So, took a lot of time doing this. So, I'm gonna let this one read for me.
Part 1 Introduction. Harlem Renaissance Video Crash Course. Click here for the video.
Renaissance.
Please
Okay.
watch the whole thing. Watch this introductory video for a basic understanding of the Harlem Renaissance. Just listen and watch, no questions to answer about video, but it might be referred back to on a test or quiz. Part 2, PBS History of Harlem Renaissance Reading. Click here for this link. 1. What was the Harlem Renaissance? The Harlem Renaissance was the name given to the cultural, social, and artistic explosion. 2. Why did African Americans move north? Because they had to begin moving in the numbers they collected about history. 3. List 3 African American artists whose work received recognition. Jacob Lawrence, Karen Walker, and Romer Bearden. 4. In the 1920s, when a person identified as the New Negro, what did they stand for? National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. 5. What was the greatest impact of the Harlem Renaissance? The greatest impact is reinforced by the race pride among blacks. Part 3, Harlem Renaissance artist Langston Hughes biography reading. Click here for this link. 6. What year was Langston Hughes born? February 1st, 1902. 7. What year did he die? May 22nd, 1967. 8. What were some of the changes, or challenges, that Langston Hughes went through as a child growing up? He realized blacks could be among the rejection of sort of companies. 9. Hughes was particularly known for his insightful. Part 4, How did Hughes get published? Reading. Click here for this link. 10. What did Langston Hughes do that was pretty gutsy and helped him get his first work published? He paid for his college tuition on the condition that girls weren't.
All right, jazz and blues. Jazz and blues were extremely popular starting in the 1920s. Hailing from the New Orleans jazz, music was first known as jazz, then later dropped the two S into Z's, into Z, S, Z, which means cool. Jazz took shape in several brass bands. The jazz style was dominated by the use of saxophone, piano, cornet, and trombone. Particularly for the southern part of Mississippi, blues came into being with its first ever recorded blues music in the 1920s. Around that time, blues was usually played as a solo compared to the symbols of jazz music. All the blues music has long since grown to be utilized in interstate bands. The first blues solo player was just used as slide guitar as a primary musical instrument. So, explain the two differences between jazz and blues based on an introductory paragraph. Main focus of the music is dynamics and improvisations of an ensemble. Blues music is usually centered as the original jazz music.
Pick a jazz or blues soundtrack to play to get you acquainted with these awesome music forms. Jazz, click here for Jazz Link. Blues, click here for Blues Link. Part 5, now that you have a soundtrack playing, open a new Google browser window and play this history of jazz video. Video number 1, click here for your video and answer the questions below. 11. According to the video, where was jazz born? New Orleans. 12. Jazz is a blend of which types of styles of music? List them here. 3. 19th century band, ragtime, and Afro-American folk. 13. In its early days, jazz was considered to be what type of music? A bad thing? Creole. 14. True, the first jazz recording was done by an all-white band in New Orleans. 15. Which group of soldiers in World War I took jazz to an international audience while overseas? Hint, we've already talked about them once. Harlem Hellfighters Band. 16. The Roaring Twenties became known as the Jazz Age. Part 6 answers the questions as you watch the video. Click here for your video. 17. Jazz is very much based on the origins and early history. 18. One of the hallmarks of jazz is creative freedom.
Alright, gonna stop you right here. Okay, so I'll be answering one of the questions. Alright, so 19. Jazz expresses a core of American values and freedom risking culture. Alright, 20. What types of music did jazz lead to? Rock and roll. What has jazz influenced? Modern music. Finish this sentence. Jazz is so diverse that it can express any emotion. Finish this sentence. Jazz has become the first popular element historical narratives in American history. 4 blanks total. You can delete the blanks if you like, and to fill in the space with the words. Alright, if you guys have any questions, let me know. If you guys have responses, you can add them too. Alright, see you guys in the part 108.